Robert.
I am here, and welcome everybody to Fight for Our Freedom Radio. I am your, I am your, I'm your fill-in host this evening for Bad Baby. Of course, she's still out sick. You know, she's dealing with it, folks. She's trying the best she can. You know, she can talk, okay, but just not for long periods of time because of the illness she's dealing with. So she is, doing the best she can under the circumstances. But, of course, here we are. It's Friday night, and we got an incredible guest. I love Marshall Masters, by the way. I've had the pleasure of speaking to him many, many times on many different occasions on my previous radio show. He's just, in my opinion, he's a true expert on the subject. His relentless research and dedicated knowledge to the process of bringing forward the information and actual proof of Planet X has been incredible. Marshall, I'm putting the phone number for you in the chat right now, so I'm going to put Marshall, or this is for you, Marshall. And that's the number, so just call right in, Marshall, and you'll be ready to rock and roll, brother, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. Again, and, I have to say this before we do the bumper. Like I said, I feel very privileged to speak with Marshall because I had the opportunity in the past to do this with him on many occasions, but this is special because I'm filling in for Bad Baby, and I get to do this as a guest host, which was really neat for me, by the way. It's exciting. So let's do this. Let's go to the bumper music, and then we'll get our wonderful guest, Marshall Masters, with us, and we're going to talk about his new article that he posted saying that, Nibiru and the Planet X system, or our binary twin, is now within Earth's inner solar system. And this is going to be exciting. It could be quite frightening, and I know the Marshall says that, we're in for a hell of a ride. It really just comes down to the fact of how we come out of it on the other side. And welcome back, everybody, to Fight for Our Freedom Radio, and I am your fill-in host this evening, Robert Pepino, filling in for your regular host, Bad Baby. And like I mentioned earlier, she is out still due to a serious illness that she's had. She, like I said, she can talk, but only for a certain amount of time, and then it fatigues her, so she's fighting through this whole thing. But that being said, I want to welcome my friend Marshall Masters. Marshall, I have not spoken to you, my friend, in a long time, and this is something really special for me because I got to tell you the truth, I never thought that we'd be doing another radio show with you again. But you know what? I don't believe in coincidence, and here it is once again, my friend, on my friend's radio show, and this is a true honor for me because I have just the highest respect for you, my friend. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Well, you're welcome, Robert, and it's been a while.
It has. It really has. I think the last time... Go ahead, Marshall. I was simply going to say, I think the last time we had such an intense conversation about Planet X, I think was around 2013. So that really has been a while.
Yeah.
And I just need to say, I loved your the show you did today with Leak Project. I thought it was really, really good, by the way. Because he's really good. Yeah, it was fantastic, Mark. As always, you're just such an eloquent and direct to the point speaker. You don't mince words. That's one thing I've always loved about you. You're direct. You tell it how it is. Hey, folks, if you want to deal with it, this is what it is. If you don't, then you have to live with it. But the bottom line is, you're always direct with people. And that's one of the biggest appreciations I have for you. You're direct. I don't know how any other. I don't know how to describe it any other way, my friend.
Well, it's an important topic, and it's not one you approach from service to self, or self-promotion and fear-mongering. And no, this is a somber topic, and I just lay it out for people the best way I can. And in the final analysis, you got to look at yourself when you're shaving in the morning. And I have no problems with that. Through the years, it's always been about just telling people what it is. You call it, it's whether it's good or whether it's bad, it's what it is. And you pass it along and let people decide for themselves what is the truth. The truth is that matters with something like this is whatever resonates within you, because you and you alone put it there. And I do feel that there is a responsibility that when you're reporting on things, particularly as something of this heavy nature, that you need to bring as much integrity to it as possible. And you do your level best to lay out the facts in a way that people can independently verify them. And you also have to separate that from your opinions. And you need to be honest about your opinions. So this is a topic where if the things that are coming to pass, and I see them coming to pass, occur, we're talking about a major dieback of the human species. It's not, the end of life. It's not where we're going to have a planet crashing into our planet. Either morons or fear-mongers or disinformation operatives are going to tell you that kind of nonsense. You'll never hear it from me, never have.
Well, Marshall, there's definitely a word to sum that, what you just set up. It's all those trolls on the internet that are being paid as government shills to detract or deter people from learning the truth. But you're 100% right about what you said.
Yes. I published an article this year, and I've always known that a harbinger of what I would call a major watershed event, where people are looking up in the sky and they're seeing something that they instinctively understand shouldn't be there given a normal sky, quote unquote normal. And that is when folks are going to take pause, and it's no longer entertainment. Right now, Planet X, even though I have been putting up through the years, back in 2013 when we first talked, I was reporting on imagery coming from a webcam on the Turrialba volcano.
You deemed that, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, blue bonnet, and I remember that specifically. And I think you started that a little further back than that, going back to 2011 or 2012, because you were finding that object of interest. And that piqued my curiosity immediately, Marshall.
Yes, interestingly enough, one of the things that people do have a good regard for me on in general, particularly those that are authentic researchers, is they like my image analysis. And you're not going to see me going, look, a cloud that looks like a planet.
Right.
I don't want to break anybody's bubble here. I don't want to send anyone's emotions crashing to the floor. But sometimes a cloud is just a cloud. Okay.
Well, I'll agree. Look, you got no argument for me there, Marshall. None at all.
And, so we have a lot of this. And, well, I knew this nonsense would ratchet up. The noise level would get there because I've been tracking what the disinformation operatives have been doing for some time. My first article was in January of 2002. And did Planet X kill the dinosaurs?
Okay, I just need to say this. I'm going to really date myself, but I actually remember reading that stuff way back when. Okay?
Wow. So, cool.
I'm just letting you know where I am in all this.
All right. We're both blasts from the past.
Yes, sir.
Love it. And, interestingly enough, that article was the result of, people always ask me, how did you get into this? And I found Planet X because we were trying to understand global warming.
That's when you were working with CNN, correct? Back then. That was like a 90, I think it was in the 90s, right? 97, 98, right around there?
No, it was actually in the 80s. And
okay, so it even goes, okay.
I was there pre-Fonda.
Oh, wow.
Before Jake Fonda took over. I was there, when Ted was running the shop. And, man, I'm going to tell you, he was one tough driver. But on the other hand, CNN was a lean, mean news machine. And I graduated with a degree in communications from Arizona State University. And to have worked with them as a science feature producer was, at that time, just one of the most amazing and wonderful things in my life, and I got to do a lot of interesting things. I covered the universities in Texas. That was my beat. I did 3-minute science features.
And Marshall, just so you know, that I live in Phoenix. So because I was here, we moved here when I was just a kid in '77. So you were here at that time. I don't believe in coincidence, brother. So,
wow,
yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because in '77, that was that's when I got my degree from ASU.
Wow.
And then I headed to Texas because that's at that point, that was about the only place you could find a job in the country. It was a tough time, and in Houston, all you had to do was make sure your socks were the same color, and you could get a job. And so
that's funny.
I left.
That was funny.
I left Phoenix, but it was the truth. Then again, when it went bust, okay, and West Texas Intermediate went under $15 a barrel because the Iraqis and the Iranians were selling oil on the cheap to finance their war efforts, and that devastated Texas. And back then, there was the standard joke was the only thing that could put anything down on a new Cadillac was a pigeon.
I got it. Very funny.
But, it was fun while it lasted, and then wound up coming out to California, and then from California to Nevada. Just, it's interesting how life goes. I'm in Reno now. I love it here. And reminds me a lot of Phoenix.
Just to clarify, though, because I know that you were the science news director for CNN at that time, correct?
No, I was not a director. I was a field producer.
Okay,
I was actually the guy out there. I was out in the field producing stories, and I would fly into Atlanta about 4 times a year with my story packages. The universities their public information officers worked with me, and they would package a bunch of stories and things that were interesting. I like that, or I'll pitch this, I'll pitch that, get it all together, go to Atlanta, and go sit down with the executive producer for the science division, which was disbanded by CNN 10 years ago. And then we would pick out all the stories, and I would go back and get my crew, and we'd go out and shoot the stories. And it was really a lot of fun to go out and do it. We were doing good work. These were 3-minute features, so there was a lot of thought given to it, and how we put them together and how we'd shoot them. And now, when I moved to California from Texas, then they didn't need anybody out, and they didn't have a beat for me out in California. Otherwise, I would have continued doing it.
Right.
And but I just wanted to go get in the computer business. And the thing about when we were doing it was that the professional discipline was amazing. I mean, I look at the CNN now, and it's like, yeah, I agree with Larry King. They ought to call it the Cartoon News Network.
I use the Clown News Network or the Communist News Network. I mean, that's how ridiculous it's become, in my opinion, Marshall.
Well, they don't do investigative journalism. I mean, when I was there, it was investigative journalism. It was serious. You remember CNN, back in the beginning, they would always have that long shot of the newsroom.
Yep, I remember that specifically.
Well, I can remember when I used to go to Atlanta to work with my executive producer, I liked sitting in the conference room with a cup of coffee. That was my speed. But sometimes we would have to go into that newsroom, and I seriously dreaded it because the tension in there was so thick you could cut it with a knife. And I'd walk out of there just out of breath from, all the tension that was in there.
Sure.
I couldn't believe it. And it was really serious. They don't do that now. They don't have that level of work. They just, they report what they're told to report.
And here's the thing, because I know you know Greg Hunter. He was a CNN anchor at CNN. He said when he tried to bring out stories, they had to be quadruple, quintuple checked over and over and over to be absolute fact when they were bringing that information out. I think you guys were you probably ran into each other or were working together at the same time. I don't know if it was the Atlanta office or not for Greg, because I know they have multiple offices, but at the same time, he's saying exactly what you're saying right now. When that news reporting was going on, it was actually real. You had to actually go do investigative journalism, just like you're saying now.
Yeah, I mean, the journalism standards were just simply top drawer. Simply top drawer. And when you're working under those circumstances, I guess a good way to define the difference between yellow journalism and corporate journalism, as I call it, and what we see, which we see today, is that the ownership of authenticity. When I was there, the ownership of the authenticity was the responsibility of the reporter. If you didn't have your facts wired tight, and they went with the story and they got caught, you were kicking rocks down the road. That was it.
Yes. Yeah, somebody's out of a job at one point or another, right?
That's right. There was zero tolerance for that. But that was with a professional standard. You don't have that today. What you have is, and this is really more of a pandemic that goes across the board through the electronic media, where responsibility for authenticity is now the responsibility not of the reporters, but it's the responsibility of the listener or the viewer.
Right.
And so the audience now is responsible for the authenticity of the information. And this is, everything's essentially been distilled down into an entertainment basis where our job is just to, vomit this stuff, and your job is to be entertained by it. If you take it seriously, then you need to really authenticate it. And that's the new rule. That's why there's not a lot of respect for the media anymore today, because people are not seeing that level of effort. Now, why did it get that way? How did that come about? And the reason why that came about was you got to look at the George W. Bush. George W. Bush is the man who destroyed the professional media in the country on the electric side. Definitely. He's the man. He set out to do it, and he destroyed it, and people don't understand it because, that's when somebody does the crime, they don't want to run out and paste a billboard that says, hey, look at what I've done. But
Right.
he's the one who did it. Now, he came in, and the first thing he did, literally, just a couple of days after he was inaugurated, he appointed a new chairman of the FCC by the name of Powell. It was Colin Powell's son. Remember Colin Powell?
Absolutely.
The WMD in Iraq guy, that lied at the UN.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So this was a political appointment. And what Bush brought him in to do was to start the process of dismantling all of the anti-concentration rulings and regulations at the FCC that dated back to 1941, including things like right of reply. Now, it used to be we had a vibrant electronic media. We had a wonderful press, but it was destroyed because once they removed anti-concentration rulings, he didn't get it with Powell. He couldn't get enough juice to push it through the first time. And so it was a couple of years later with another appointee that he put in, and that other appointee did it. So instead of it being you could only own a handful of media outlets in any market or in total, and these were the controls that were in place. So you had a bunch of diversity. You had created this framework that the FCC had implemented forced competition because you had a whole bunch of people competing against each other. In the 80s, when I was at CNN was very well aware of the fact that it was up against 50 competitive news sources.
Right.
Not
right.
Because once George W. Bush destroyed all of this anti-concentration, all of these rules that had been in place going back to 1941, it allowed for concentration. And you have guys like, Clear Channel, and they would go into a market, they would target a station that they wanted to acquire, independently owned, and they go to the owner and they say, they make them a deal they can't refuse. We're going to give you more than your station's worth, and you can go retire in the Bahamas.
You just nailed it. Yeah, conglomerate consumption and domination. You nailed it right on the head, period. And that's what they've been doing.
And that's what they did. And so what happens is after they acquire that station, the first thing they do is send in a crew to install a black box that literally connects that station to the home studio for the network. And it's like, why do you see guys like Rush Limbaugh everywhere in the country? All right? Well, the reason why you see a guy like Rush Limbaugh everywhere is that if Clear Channel owns him, he's the content provider that they're putting out there. And so they would go in, buy the station, and then they'd get the head end of the system so that it was taking the network feed from the studio that this conglomerate owns. And after they got that operational, the next thing they would do is they would keep everybody who was in the sales and marketing department. But they would go into the local news department and slash and burn, leave just a couple of people. That's it, for just a little bit of local news. But all of used to be, there were a lot of stations in larger markets that had international news divisions. For those
So
that
there
can
has
remember
been
that.
Marshall, there has been a total consolidation of the news organizations by the elite, and I suspect it is exactly why we're leading down this, this primrose path they have laid out for us, because of the consolidation of these organizations through the elite money to consolidate the information, compartmentalize it, and then keep the talking heads at their, speaking points in order to, create, basically to show us this magic act that this is what we want you to think and believe, but in reality, in the background, the other hand is creating the trick behind their back is what's really happening in the forefront. And I know, because this is what started you on your quest, is when I know you made frequent flights over the Arctic and saw that the ice sheet looked like a shattered windshield. You've talked about that so many times, and you said, okay, folks, reality is blank is hitting the fan. And I'm just, using that word
right.
tangentially, right? So the reality is something real is really happening, and we're not being told the truth. And Marshall, people are bombarding me with questions in the chat, my friend. But this always happens with you whenever you're on any show. I know that.
Okay.
So
well, let's get to that. Before we do, let me ask you for a favor, because there's something I want to ask everybody in your audience to do. We see what George W. Bush did, all right? And by the way, I'm an unaffiliated independent. I believe in none of the above, all right? I think the big problem in our country is we have a two-party system that is not two parties. It's all this, it's all the same. They're all feeding from the same trough. But right now, the thing that concerns me with Trump and is that he has put in a new FCC chairman, and this new FCC chairman is gunning for terminating net neutrality. If net neutrality goes, then the Internet's going to have 3 lanes. Fast lane for the good old boys, a slow lane for everybody they want to milk, and a no lane for everybody they want to stifle and suppress. And so the last bastion of free speech, which is net neutrality on the Internet, if we lose that, it's gone. Now, there was a big fight, and a lot of people joined a movement. They put in 5 million phone calls to their elected officials in Washington, 2 million letters to the FCC, and they were able to stop it. But these guys are persistent, and they're patient, and they'll come around, and they'll make another run at it again and again and again until they destroy net neutrality. And
right. Marshall, you're right. They work in quarter centuries, half centuries, and full centuries, without a question. And they do this generationally. And the one thing, just really quick, how do they coerce people into this pocket of power in order to run this generational system of longevity that could continue, down their new world order path? Just really quick, in your opinion.
Well, it's family lines. It's, you don't have to physically put a crown on somebody's head to make them emperor. Look, here's the fact. Less than 1,000 people own 80 to 90% of all the assets in the world. That's a slave planet.
Right.
Period. And their ambition is, they're not interested in titles. They're interested in control.
That's total power.
They want to have total power. That's all it is about. It is total power. And so they're going to continue doing this. We are in a situation with particularly Planet X coming up, where on one hand, yes, we're going to have a terrible, terrible tribulation. And I use that not religiously, but purely as the word is defined, great trial or testing.
Right.
And we're going to go through this. And the reason why I use that term specifically is it is a trial. It is a testing. It is testing our resolve as a species to claim our right of freedom, to break free of this slavery, to take and throw off the yoke. This is our destiny. This is the destiny that God wants for us. God does not want us. And, you know, you look at the Hopi prophecy, Rocket, and it says, if we keep going the way we're going...
I was just going to bring that up. You read my mind. I was just going to bring that up. Oh.
Okay. If this happens again, I'm going to cover my head with tinfoil.
Right?
And, but yeah, we're thinking down the same lines here. And absolutely, what does the Hopi prophecy rock really tells us? It says if we keep going the way we're going to go, it's not going to be good. But if we take the high road, we go for the brass ring, so to speak. We have a beautiful future. We could have that Star Trek future that we crave and hunger for. You know, Gene Roddenberry tapped into something, our species, if you get right down to our racial memory, embedded right into our uncoded DNA, is this passion for freedom. It's always been this way. If we didn't have it, there would have never been a Spartacus. All right? And,
or a Gandhi, right? Or
a Gandhi. That's right.
Right?
Bingo, you got it. And so we, you know, it's always this constant battle between our desire for freedom and the elites who want to control us. Now, why do they want to control us is the question.
Right.
And, you know, you were listening to today when I was talking with Rex.
Right.
And because Rex he's colorful, you know. I mean, this guy
he is. He really is. I love the guy. I mean, he's just, you know, he's just being himself. He really is. I think he's terrific.
He is. But, you know, when in doing an interview with him, remember that movie Network where he's going, you know, everybody's standing, they're opening their apartment windows and they're out shaking their fists. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it.
You know how many times I have watched that movie thinking that should be me screaming at the top of my lungs, joining everybody else? I've seen that movie a half a dozen times, Marshall.
And, you know, I loved that film. It was way ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And they were seeing what was coming down the road, and they produced it. I think it should be mandatory viewing in history classes in high school.
You know, what else was released at the same time, which most people don't know about, was the movie Rollover with Hugh Cronin and I forgot the Christopher, very popular actor in the 60s and 70s. Christopher, can't remember, and it's not Christopher Walken or Christopher Reeves. It's not him. It's but it was Rollover, you know, and it was about the takedown of our economic system, and they came out right around pretty much the same time, which kind of coincides with what's everything is happening now, Marshall.
Yeah. I mean, we saw all this stuff coming, and the warning's been there. But in the final analysis, I mean, you got to get down to motives because people see what's happening, and they're angry, and they're fighting. And I was sitting there, this morning with Rex, and I'm going, okay, look, you need to simplify. And I'm saying, go to Costco, go pick up one of these. You can get these great, big chunks of Atlantic farm-raised, fish, all right? These salmon. And these things are like $20 to $30. It's literally. It's half a fish. And what you do is, if you really want to understand who's doing to us, you just stand there in Costco. You got to have that physical connection. Pick up one of these fakakata pieces of fish, okay? And you're standing there. We're the fish.
Yeah.
You're the elites, okay? You're the elites. What people have to understand, they don't want to grope, is we're a food source. And we're being used as a food source by dark forces existing on many different planes of existence. Okay?
Right.
And, it's how you perceive things. Here's an example. You have a 16-year-old girl, talented, smart, kind, compassionate. One man looks at her, and he sees a universe of opportunity, family, career, service to community, achievement, love, all of these wonderful things. And the other man looks at her and sees sees an organ that he can rent out for money. And
Right.
It's just as simple as that. Okay? And the people who are doing this, these are sociopaths. Everybody's going, why? Why are they so uncaring? Why are they so cruel? Again, go to Costco, pick up the fakakata fish, and then you'll understand.
Right, we're the fish in the bucket. Marshall, sometimes the way you structure your vocabulary and your sentences is so unique that it makes me laugh, but it makes me think at the same time. And it's just it's incredible, my friend. Listen, I got to get to some of these questions because I could talk to you for like 4 or 5 hours just on basic subjects, because you're just such an incredibly intelligent man. But let's do this. Look, first question. Somebody wants to know what the heck is going on in Yellowstone. I mean, we're seeing all these minor tremors, but there's so many of them. And I want to caveat that with what is going on at Mammoth Mountain now with all these tremors that are taking place at the supervolcano in California, which not too many people are aware of. What's your thought process on that, my friend?
Well, I'm damn glad to hear you talking about Long Valley.
Okay, thank you.
Because that's the conversation that's really important. Now let's talk about Yellowstone.
Okay, let's do it.
When I started doing my Cut to the Chase podcast back in 2004, I think, the first 2 shows I did were with Jim Birkeland. He was the geologist.
Oh, I know Jim. Boy, I know him.
Yep. And matter of fact, went to a baseball game with him, and I really enjoyed it. And Jim he was a geologist with USGS, and he accurately predicted the Loma Prieta quake in 1983. Sometimes it's called the San Francisco quake or the ballpark, the World Series quake.
Yeah.
And excuse me, I was a survivor of that. As a matter of fact, I was when it hit, I was about 5 miles south of the stadium, and on an area of South San Francisco that was actually landfill, so it just shook like jello. And I was really, really impressed with what he had done. I saw how he had been bullied by the USGS really bad.
Oh, the moment he started predicting things, they shut him down as fast as they could. And I was so disheartened by that, Marshall. I was like, and that was another awakening point for me to see how things really run in this country and worldwide as far as the manipulation. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I digress. Continue.
No, go ahead. So in 2003, Yellowstone was red listed. It got everybody's attention, and it went from yellow to red. Stayed on red ever since. And I've been tracking it. Now, Yellowstone, last time it erupted, was a major eruption. It had a limestone cap, and it blew the cap. So this time, if it erupts, it's going to be more like a string of Mount St. Helens. And you put half a dozen or a dozen of those together, that's going to leave a mark. That's going to hurt.
Yeah, but it's not going to be a game changer because, like you said, it blew its cap, so there's no cap on it this time. So it's going to be a lot less devastating, right? Makes sense to me.
Right. Now, another thing about Yellowstone is a lot of people get very nervous about all the seismic activity, and yeah, it is really cranked up. But this is usually the result of magma displacement. That's the thing about Yellowstone. It keeps displacing the magma. In other words, yes, it's coming up. They have found a caldera beneath the caldera that's really massive, but it's coming up and it's going out sideways. And so, yes, Yellowstone is going to be a problem. There will be eruptions, and however, the one that I've always been more worried about is Long Valley Caldera in California.
Right.
That is another supervolcano, and it is a single chamber, and the magma is not displacing. And now, in the mountains surrounding, there's earthquakes not beneath the mountains, but inside the mountains themselves. And that's happening. And so we're seeing supervolcano patterns at both sides, and I attribute this to what I call crustal undulation. And what that really means is that the core of the planet is heating in response to increasing solar luminosity. The sun's getting brighter.
Let me ask you something, Marshall, before you go any further. I've always kind of placed that ideology to the compression of the Juan de Fuca Cascadia plate because there's so much pressure being built up on that, fault, that slip fault line, that it's compressing that mountain range, both mountain ranges, which I don't know, you give me your opinion on this, your take, but because of the compression, because it's squeezing back the American, the continental plate, the United States plate, could that be causing the pressure to create these small but massive seismic activity that's happening as well?
Well, I see it on a much more global basis.
Okay.
Right? What I am seeing is that back in 1999, I published a paper on global warming. I worked on that with a couple of other people. And this is how I really got into Planet X. What we determined was that we were saying, okay, the argument that, like Al Gore is putting over in an inconvenient truth, I call it an inconvenient omission, is that this is all principally man-made, which is an excellent argument for special taxes and consolidation of power and all types of other things. However, we were going, is this truly man-made? If that's the case, then this global warming is going to be limited to Earth. And it will not be the same with any other body in our solar system that has an atmosphere. Because what you're talking about is atmospheric perturbation. You have four spheres. You have the lithosphere, that's the ground beneath us, and then you have the aquasphere, all of the water. You have the biosphere, all of the life, and the atmosphere. So what we were doing is saying, are we seeing atmospheric perturbation, like on Earth, with elsewhere? Well, when we started looking around, oh my God, everything with his atmosphere was evidencing this atmospheric perturbation that Earth is having. And, for example, there was a warming phase on Mars that if we were to have that level of warming here on Earth, we would now be extinct. But you're also seeing other patterns with the big eye on Jupiter is disappearing. But you could just go through a litany of things.
You know, and I've been following this, Marshall, as long as you have, and I've seen all those patterns, and I just can't understand why the scientific community as a whole can't simply say, look, these things have actually happened. Now, I understand they're on payrolls, and especially government payrolls, so they're either going to lose their job or lose their life. I've got that. And we've seen many scientists knocked off because of this. But if the scientific community actually got together and said, look, guys, this is what's going on. In your opinion, do you think that finally the government of the world would say, okay, let's not just try and save ourselves, but let's try and save everybody? Or as many as we can.
Well, is there, have they been honest about it? Well, let me tell you this. In 1999, when we published, we said the principal causality is solar. And we identified the causality, which is solar luminosity, brightness.
Right.
And the brightness of the sun has been increasing steadily. This is because it is interacting with Nemesis, its twin. And although, at the time we weren't talking, we were just going, no, this is not a normal pattern. That was one of the first things you're looking for is natural variability. And it was not natural variability. We determined when we published our findings was that the planet is responding to this steady increase in solar luminosity. The sun is getting brighter and brighter and brighter and sending a lot more photons our way. Well, when we published that in 99, I have never been crucified so badly in my life. I mean, oh my God, everybody was dumping on the letters, the emails, it was ugly. And it was all so ugly, I was really intimidated and bowled over. So I pulled it because I just didn't want to get hammered like that anymore. And I was pushed into silence. I allowed myself to do that. But in, I think, 2004 or was it 2005, Max Planck Institute, very prestigious scientific institute, came out and said exactly the same damn thing. Max Planck Institute said global warming is the result of increasing solar luminosity. Okay?
Yep.
And you can, if you want to search, you can still find that.
Yeah, no, I've searched it. I know. I've seen it.
And so the information's out there. People can find it if they know what to look for. And you would think with all of this debate that's going on, somebody would say, Max Planck Institute, hey guys, they got the answer. No, nobody talks about it. And think about this. When was the last time you were on a commercial airliner? And the pilot came over? Been a while?
Yeah, it's been a long while for me, Marshall. But I also, and I need to tell you this. I was out playing a game of golf. This was last year, okay? And I spoke to a pilot, flew for American Airlines, okay? And and there were two questions I posed to him. And his eyes got as big as his head when I asked him these questions. I said, okay, why is the United States government spraying all of the United States and other Western worlds with these heavy chemicals and minerals? And when I posed that question to him, I'm telling you, Marshall, his eyes got as big as his head, and he was stuttering and stumbling, and he says, well, I can't really talk about that. So I knew immediately what he meant by that. Secondly, I asked him, I said, how heavily are you, as a pilot, how heavily are you guys being irradiated right now? Well, and he said to me, because of the chemtrail spraying, it would have been 10 times worse, and probably most of us wouldn't be flying right now if it wasn't due to the chemtrail spraying. So I don't know, you could take that any way you want, but that's what this guy told me.
Well, I can tell you that I have a friend who was a professional pilot and for a major carrier. He's retired. He was a 777 driver, and he said Boeing 777 has a very, very sophisticated computer system on board. And so during flights, he'd see him doing chemtrails, and he could actually go down into the equipment bay, plug in something, and then he was able to use his own software and a laptop, because he was going, I can see these guys, but they're not squawking. In other words, their transponders are not out there. They can't hear any transponder signals coming from these guys. And he actually determined that all of this chemtrailing, which principally takes place around 20 to 25,000 feet, commercial airliners are about 30 to 35 typically, and 20 to 25,000 feet, they have their own global air traffic control system, completely independent of the military, completely independent of civilian, the FAA. So they're out there, and they're in their own controlled airspace, and they're spraying this stuff. Now, you hear guys like Dane Wigington, and for those of you who need to come up to speed on it, Geoengineering Watch is the website. Dane Wigington. This guy is heroic. He is heroic. I have a lot of respect for him.
Me too, Marshall.
Because, see, in 1999, when I published my results and I went and started doing Yowza, I was working with a guy who was ex-military intelligence. And he'd read all the documents on Planet X. That's how he got into it. And I was writing for the Millennium Group. His name was John Maynard. He later got involved with Stephen Greer, Steve Setti. And, once you're in the company, you never retire. You're always doing something. And his job was to help break up alternative science websites that were running against the grain on NASA's public stories. Millennium Group was just humiliating NASA, And they were pretty much close to shutting them down when I came out of nowhere with my King of Terror story and revitalized the site. So Maynard was brought back in, and his job was to, what they do is they wait for personality conflicts to explode into fights, and then they can fracture the team and get people out. And that was the case. It was the guy who was running Millennium site was a little anal retentive, control freak, and it all started with Professor Jim McCaney, who was just piss-eyed drunk one night and ugly. He was an ugly drunk. And called me and just ripped my butt about he had put up his electric universe theory, and he wanted it taken down. And Gary Goodwin, who ran the site, this guy was just, there was nothing flexible about him. And I'm trying to be a nice guy to work out something. So I took the link off the home page, but left the paper on the site so that Gary could work with McCaney. And as it was, McCaney and Goodwin exploded, and then I was the fall guy. Everybody, I was Mr. Bad News.
Mm-hmm.
So, no good deed goes unpunished.
Right.
And in walks John Maynard, and he goes, well, you don't have to take this abuse. Go out and do your own thing. You're the one who got 5 million hits on your story about the King of Terror, which was, I'm the guy who found the comet prophesized to appear during an eclipse in 1999. I'm the guy who discovered Nostradamus' comet. Okay?
Right.
So I'm sitting there, and I'm caught between these two jamokes, and it's miserable, and I'm going, hey, man, I'm just volunteering my time. I don't need this grief. So I had my domain name, Your Own World USA, which I had used when I had my travel business going to Russia. And I still, was like, well, ain't broke, don't fix it. Why pay for something else? And I just fired up a hosting account and started doing it. And Maynard helped me set it up. He gave me a lot of good advice on how to deal with things, which has really helped me out over the years. I mean, his job was to split up the Millennium Group, and he was effective, but he never wanted to hurt anybody. He didn't want anybody to come out with their lives being damaged.
So he had some moral standing, and that's good to a certain extent, yes.
Yes, and so, but he figured that I would do it for 6 or 7 months, get bored, and then that would be the end of it. He wasn't, what happened was I went to Israel and had a very profound and personal moving experience. And at that point, I knew, no way was I going to just walk away from it. That was a turning point in my life. It had happened to me actually on Masada is where that happened. And so I stayed in it since that day.
You were in for the fight all the way, Marshall. That's been proven. You were in for the fight all the way.
That's it. Yeah, I couldn't. I'll tell you, man. There's a lot of other things I could do to make good money.
Sure.
A lot more money. Professionally, I could go back into the computer business, and I could quadruple my income. I could, but dang, once you realize you what happens is before you incarnate, you tell Creator, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and then that's it. Put up a show.
And that's the whole thing, Marshall. That's exactly it. You're not aware of what you're going to do as an incarnate, and we do this over and over, I know, until it comes, basically just drops in your lap, and you say, oh, I understand what I'm supposed to be doing now. I'm supposed to be helping people. I'm supposed to be healing people. I'm supposed to be warning people, because I am in the same shoes that you are, my friend. You are just a very different and more researched and enlightened position, my dear friend. But I feel the same as you. And I need to throw another question at you because they just keep building up here, my dear friend.
Okay, let's go.
All right, let's do this. Okay, so we have a guest asking, okay, what do you know about new technology to hide Planet X? I'm assuming that is the whole, Fresnel lens that everybody's been talking about, which is able to, distort the sun's light to hide Planet X. What's your point? What's your take on that, my friend?
Man, when these objects start coming out from behind the sun, I don't care how many Fakakata mirrors you have in space.
That's what I think as well. That's my point of view as well, Marshall.
I mean, it's like this thing's going to come out, and people, I'll tell you what kind of mirrors you're going to have? You're going to have a whole bunch of people standing out on the street with their friends, neighbors, and associates pointing up at the sky and pooping their collective pants,
Yeah, I think
anything like that?
Yeah, I think that as well. I mean, let's say we have the technology to build a mirror, okay, and put it up into space that's a mile by a mile wide, okay, mile long, mile wide. That's a pretty gigantic mirror. That is so infinitesimally small compared to our sun and our Earth that, you would have to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those mirrors to hide or refract sunlight, or to make the sunlight even more powerful because, they're saying we're in a solar minimum. You know what? And that part of it, Marshall, I don't know what to believe. Solar minimum, we have all these massive coronal mass ejections coming off the sun. I'm kind of at a loss because everybody's got a different point of view. What's your take on that real quick?
All right. Well, with all of these things, first off, you're saying, are they in low Earth orbit, or
right.
are they?
They would have to be. I think they would have to.
And
be.
if they're in low Earth orbit, okay, you would have to have a fleet of them. A fleet. And they would have to be synchronized to pass control off one to another. All right? And whereas if you have satellites that are in geosynchronous orbit, ask somebody who's, installs Dish TV for a living. They have multiple satellites.
Absolutely.
And you have to have, in order to have global coverage, you can't have one satellite that is giving you instantaneous global coverage everywhere. You've got to have satellites that are, 3 or 4 of them, so that you have this footprint, and that way then you can transmit from satellite to satellite. This is how we get stuff going. In other words, whether it's in geosynchronous or it's low Earth orbit, they have to have a fleet of these things out there. A whole fleet of them. And I don't see them talking about this. I mean, to me, I listen to this, and it takes me back to Reagan with Star Wars. He totally bluffed the Russians.
Right.
Star Wars was a pipe dream that they were selling, freaked out the Russians, who took it seriously, and spent themselves into, that was it. They just spent themselves into defeat. And this, to me, is just another distraction.
And I think so too, Marshall.
I'm putting up quality videos. I mean, let's be honest. 90% of the stuff I see on YouTube is crap.
Yeah, flares. I know. I've seen so many of them, but I've seen some very, very legitimate photographs as well. That's that 10% that you're talking about, and that's what I look for, Marshall. And I agree with you.
And that's what I look for too. And I do see really, really good stuff. And I'm trying to, I'm doing this. And when somebody can put up a piece of crap and get 50,000 views in a day.
Yeah, that's for hits. That's for hits and monetary value, Marshall. You know it as well as I do.
That's right. But, I could spend a week to 2 weeks doing exhaustive analysis, lay it all out, detail the findings, put it up. I'll get 5,000 views.
Right.
The guy that slaps together a piece of crap in 30 minutes gets 50,000 views, because what happens? The PTB are pushing traffic towards these Planet X fear porn mongers.
Well, those are the trolls pushing that traffic there, Marshall. That's why I mentioned it earlier.
Right, and they're pushing it out there, and I put up an article on my website called Planet X Fear Porn and Insidious Evil.
Yeah, I read
it. I finally just said, it's time people understand what's happening and what the agenda is. These people that are putting up this garbage and getting the traffic, you got to understand how the elites operate. If the elites let's say they want to flatten a village, all right? They're going to go, wow, we got this big, massive boulder on the top of this mountain, and the only thing that's keeping it in place is this little rock underneath it. Let's put a grenade so the rock shatters, and then the boulder will roll down the hill and smash the town. And that's what they do. They just walk in, put a little grenade on the rock goes crush, and the boulder starts boom. Next thing you know, you got pancake people.
Yeah.
Right? And this is how they do. They're always looking for Now, back in 2008 with Nibiru Shock 2012, this was disclosure stuff. There were 2 disclosure video people coming out of the South Pole Telescope. I'm the guy who broke the story.
I remember, Marshall, I remember when you broke it, and that evidence disappeared as quickly as it came up. I'll never forget that. It was the Shock 20, was it the Shock 2012 who put up that, or sent that information to you?
Nibiru Shock.
Right. That's right, Nibiru Shock.
Nibiru Shock, he posted his channel. He
right.
posted it anonymously. What people don't understand is if someone goes and steals my YouTube channel from me, I can get it back.
Right.
All right. And because my channel is the property of a corporation, and that gives me rights that an individual corporations, the most sacred right of law. People think it's the Constitution. No. The most sacred right of law in the United States is the expectation of profit. That is the most sacred law. Everything else is second fiddle to that. It's why drug companies can kill people with bad drugs and get away with it. All right? They have an expectation of profit. And so they've never stolen my channel. But if
right.
you're trying to be anonymous, they'll hack your account. They can hack anything because they're on the inside of the data center networks. Before I went in, my last thing, I was in the about 23 years in the computer industry. And my last 5 years, I was internet technology, particularly with regards to data centers and storage area networks and modems. And my clients included Philips Semiconductor, Oracle, Sun Microsystems, Hewlett-Packard, Lockheed Martin. These are the people I contracted to. All right.
Right. Those people, by the way, Marshall, the same people part of the, though they don't realize because it's all compartmentalized, they are the same people part of the breakaway civilization. Now, there's somebody here kind of, not trolling, but just asking some, pretty pervasive questions. And I think what he's trying to put together is saying that, if Planet X was so close, it would have destroyed us a long time ago. I think this is, and I'm going to give you my take, and then I want to see what you say. They don't really understand how with the distances we are talking about as far as within our solar system. They show these solar system models, and people get some funny ideas in their head of how closely things are compact. They have no idea what 93 million miles away means, because that's our judging of distance from the sun, which is 1 AU. They have no clue the distances these things we're talking about, and how this brown dwarf is basically invisible to the light spectrum in which we see, which is very, very narrow. It's a sliver, a spectrum of light. And I think they're I think they're trying to be funny. I don't know, but I just want you to kind of lay it out for this person so he understands what this really means and how it's being laid out here.
Well, what is it exactly he's saying?
Well, he's basically saying that if Nibiru if our twin binary system was so close, we'd all be dead already. It's all over. We wouldn't be existing on the planet right now.
Really?
Yeah, that's what basically they're saying.
Okay, so what he's beginning with is the first thing out the gate he is saying is it seems logical to me that.
Right.
All right. Well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Excuse
That's
me,
what I'm saying.
Blunt, but he's blowing it out his ass.
That's what I'm saying too.
And I'll tell you that this kind of a question is exactly the kind of a question you're going to get from a disinformation operative.
And that's what I'm looking at. And I'm thinking he started off with some nice questions, and now they turned traversely dark. And I'm like, seriously? I mean, how is this possible? You know?
That's M. That's MO. That is MO, baby. That is modus
Yeah.
operandi. You're not talking to a Yetz who doesn't understand things and he's in denial and he doesn't want to believe it, so he's going to imagine, if you will, and I don't believe this and I don't believe that. You know, anytime you start using the word believe, forget logic.
You know, I just go back to this fact, Marshall. When you started this investigation, I just go back to the whole when you started really putting out videos, Planet X 101, but basically because I followed articles prior to that. But when you put out the information from the Turrialba volcano, and I saw that blue little dot, and it got bigger through 11, 12, and 13, I said, okay, there's something very real and something very serious here. And to me, that was the blue Kachina, which proved it unequivocally to me as I watched the Earth changes get greater and greater and greater. So to the person who, basically said, if it's in our inner solar system, we're all dead, well, guess what? We're still alive, so obviously you're wrong. And I just need to say that. But, Marshall, you can lay it out any way you want, brother.
All right, well, first off, what's going to hurt us more than anything else is the interaction between Nemesis, the brown dwarf companion to our own star. We're in a binary system. It's the interactions between the two. Looking at these coronal mass ejections that have been happening recently on the opposite side of the sun, if one of those hit us, it would be the end of modern civilization. This is being reported by mainstream science. And so what is happening? The sun is interacting. Now, you have guys like Major Ed Dames, and he's been talking about the kill shot since 2004. Back then, his publicist sent me, and I still have one of his original videos from 2004, the one where he ends it by he's on the shore and he's going to go surfing, and he's out there with his, I think, a surfboard or a paddle or something. But what is remote viewing or seeing is a solar spike, or what we call cosmic lightning. And that's what these remote viewers are seeing. Now, Ed Dames is he's highly placed in the U.S. government intelligence, and remote viewing was used extensively during the Cold War by our CIA and other agencies. And after the Cold War, then they didn't need it as much, and so they just started using them as contractors. It was less expensive. They could get what they needed a la carte. What they do is remote viewing, and then they also use psychics. Now, the Russians use remote viewing and psychics as well. The difference is the emphasis. The Russians prefer psychics, and the U.S. prefers remote viewers. The thing is that you can say, well, remote viewing is blah, 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 blah. But if it's all blah, 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 why are intelligence agencies in Russia and the United States investing so much time and credibility to these types of paranormal investigations? Right. Why are they using the tools? And why do they believe them? And why do they treat these as actionable? All right. Now, what Ed Dames said is that it is there's going to be, and he said this in 2004, he said there's going to be a large planet that passes between the Earth and the Sun, and that this is the time when a kill shot event is going to happen. A solar sprite, cosmic lightning, the mother of all bug zappers. Now, a solar sprite, how far can it go and how much damage can it do? Well, we know about the Grand Canyon. And scientists tell us that it's the result of water erosion. I've been in the Grand Canyon, and I'm sorry. that one's not clicking with me. But
yeah,
let's set
that
Grand
never
Canyon aside.
clicked with me, Marshall. Never clicked with me, brother.
I-
You're going to tell
I'll
me that was
mention that
water
one.
erosion? I doubt it.
Yeah, that's when somebody says that, you might want to make sure that you step aside when they tell you so you don't get impaled on a Pinocchio effect. And nonetheless, that being it, let's talk about Val Marineris on Mars,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is the largest canyon in the solar system. Excuse me, are you going to tell me that an arid planet, water erosion created the largest canyon in the solar system? All right. And it's not consistent. There have been many impact events on Mars. Mars has been pummeled.
The moon just got hit recently. You remember that, right? I think it was last month.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And so we're seeing, for example, we've been tracking fireballs, and it's been on a steady uptick since December 21, 2012.
You know, one thing I noticed, Marshall, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Marshall, but because I follow that consistently, just like you do. There seems to be a little bit of a lull this year. What do you make of that? By the way.
Well, we're tracking. If you look at our Science 15 article, we're tracking it. I wouldn't call it a lull. It's not statistically significant enough for a lull.
Okay.
And the patterns are actually starting to uptick again as of we just finished our analysis for July. So the fireball pattern's coming up, but I mean, if you start with December 21, 2012, look at fireballs, it just keeps going up and 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 up.
And that I followed. You're absolutely right.
And so you're going to have a little bit of variability, but the overall trend is on the increase side. And I think that this is really, to me, it was more of an indicator. There's a reason why Science 15 is titled the Nemesis Cloud, that we have an Oort cloud at the edge of our solar system, and there's all kinds of theories about how it got there. A lot of them believe this was leftover debris from our sun igniting. And the difference between a brown dwarf star and a star like our star is that they were both capable of igniting, but maintaining that nuclear furnace, so to speak, was something that our sun had the mass to do, but not a brown dwarf. And brown dwarfs are a relatively new discovery in astronomy, although they are out there in vast numbers. There's actually more brown dwarfs than our own type of star.
Marshall, I had a theory, and I want to just see what you think really quick, because there's so much I need to ask you, and the time's so limited. In my opinion, and my theory, from what I understand about how the physics of science work and how stars work, ignition processes work, in my opinion, I think Jupiter, again, was an unignited star. It never ignited because it fits all the parameters of a gas giant that never reached its potential to ignite. So that may have been, and then just give me your thought here, that may have been part of our trinary system, but it got captured into our system because it wasn't large enough to ignite. So we could have been a trinary system, solar system. What do you think of that thought?
Well, there are people that feel that Jupiter should be classified as some type of sun because it puts off more radiation of its own than it receives from our sun. And a brown dwarf is going to be about twice the size of Jupiter.
Right.
Not a huge, terribly huge sun. And in terms of mass, a brown dwarf has 0.08% the mass of our own sun. And Jupiter it's interesting. It's kind of that, it seems like, is it on or near a threshold? If you remember the movie with Roy Schneider,
Oh
2010.
God, do I remember that? You know how many times I've watched that?
Oh yeah. And your whiskey from Kentucky, that was a great scene. Helen Mirren was really good.
Yeah.
And it's a fun movie, and I still watch it from time to time. It was really, really well done. But the movie ends with us seeing two suns in the sky. One of them is Jupiter, which then does turn into a star.
Right.
So this idea doesn't come out of nowhere. Hollywood is turning to bright minds in science for these scenarios. So yeah, it's an interesting thing to consider, and it's still the same. What we have is this brown dwarf. Brown dwarfs they're always cooling. Now, a good example of how much suppression there is on this, there are things that astronomers can talk about and things they cannot. They cannot talk about a major planet or an object in our solar system other than the ones that have been known and discovered that is going to be on any kind of orbit that brings it inside the inner system, inside the orbit of Mars. One. Two, or more specifically, inside the orbit of Earth. The second is that you cannot talk about sentient life living on any object anywhere in our solar system except on Earth. And then the third is that you cannot say anything that would indicate that we are in a multiple star system. Binary, trinary, whatever. These are the three taboos. You cross the line on these taboos, you will get smacked, and you will get smacked really, really hard. Now, that there's evidence of. Just recently, we reported this on Yowza.com. The ALMA Observatory in Chile, very, very large array, the largest array, and they discovered two massive objects, trans-Neptunian objects, and they raised the possibility that one of them could be a very old, very cold brown dwarf star. When I read that in their white papers, I knew they had French kissed the third rail.
Right.
Okay. Boom. Sure enough, they got hammered. And what happened was, in order to shoot these down, because now you have professional astronomers who have talked about a taboo topic. I mean, people say, well, what do you mean science can't talk about this and science can't talk about that? And I say, next time, just ask anybody you know, when was the last time you were flying on a commercial airliner and the pilot came on the speaker and said, ladies and gentlemen, if you look out the left side of the airplane, you'll see a UFO that's been dogging us for 300 miles. No, I don't think so. They know that if they do that, they land, the company's going to go, we just took away your pension, the FAA is going to take away their license, and they're in the exciting world of fast food, running the grill at Wendy's.
Right, you're done. You're
done.
You're in the you're done world.
You're in the done world, and so I mean, they always control people vis-a-vis their livelihoods.
Yeah.
And it's a very easy, very heavy hammer that they can drop on people that do something that is not in the interest of those who want to control. And so ALMA I knew that they were going to get their heads handed to them because they had published two really brilliant white papers in professional publications. And what they were doing was good science.
Right.
The astronomers at ALMA were going, hey, everybody, turn your telescopes on these coordinates and let's all look. And if we found a ghost or it's a one-trick pony, then we need to pull our papers. But here's a mystery. Let's go solve it together. And that's what they were doing. That is good science. But that was not what the powers that be wanted. So what they needed to do was they needed to get another professional in the community to disgrace these guys. And they hit them above and below the waterline. Below the waterline, they're twisting their noogies and going, you're going to lose all your funding. And that's
always the threat, Marshall. That's always the threat. That's how they keep them under wraps or under cover. You're going to lose your livelihood. You're going to lose your life. So, you speak out, you talk, you start talking truth, your life is over.
Arrivederci Roma. Welcome to the exciting world of fast food,
Yeah, 100%.
And it's, do you want to double size those fries? And that's about the end of your career.
Yeah,
so anyway, what happened is that they get, and so this is all well organized. Jeff Bezos, which he owns the Washington Post, which is the latest vomit rag now.
Yeah, which I call the Washington Compost, by the way.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. Washington Compost, that's beautiful. So what they do is they go and they find Brown over at Pluto Killer, all right, and at Caltech. And this guy's got an ego the size of Jupiter, okay? Well, perfect. They get him out, and he's got to go smear the hell out of these people. And he goes and he gets with Sarah Kaplan at the Post, because Sarah Kaplan, I think that they needed to do an axe job, and I don't think they could find any professional reporters with any sense of gravitas who would want to get their hands dirty by jumping down into this cesspool.
Yeah, agreed.
So what happens is they go and they find this Sarah Kaplan, and she writes a column that you would read in a food section or a lifestyle section. If you want to know where the best bagels and schmear are in town, you read Sarah Kaplan, all right? So I call her Bagel Babe. And then you got Mike Brown. He's Mr. Pluto Killer. So what happens next? Pluto Killer and Bagel Babe go to do the Zotz and put the schmear on these guys in Chile. And I mean, they laid the schmear on dick.
How would you like that schmear on that bagel?
How would you like the schmear on? And I mean, Bagel Babe is vomiting, parroting everything she's told to do. And so they do this tag team, and I'm sure this girl's going, oh, I'm playing with the big time. Oh, they're going to love me. And they're using her. She's a stupid, mindless yuck.
Yeah, she's a stooge, and she doesn't know it. Absolutely.
Yeah, she's a stooge. She's out of her field. She has, her scientific depth is about as much as one-ply toilet paper.
Right.
So they go and they put up these articles that just absolutely smear the guys in Chile. I mean, it's just gross and vulgar. Now, she's citing Mike Brown, okay? And Brown is just, the disrespect was just, it was painful. It was literally painful to read what he said because it was so disrespectful of his colleagues. And then Bagel Babe jumps in. She's got to get on top of the dog pile for her little piece of the action. And, what does she do? She goes and smears American astronomer Percival Lowell, who founded the Lowell Observatory.
Yep.
Mind you, she does that because guess who invented the term Planet X? It was Percival Lowell.
Yep.
Before that, it was Neptune's perturber. And that's what the Europeans were calling it after they discovered Uranus. Uranus was the first planet discovered with a telescope. Neptune was the first planet discovered with mathematics. And they literally, a couple of mathematicians did the math on the observations of Uranus.
But Marshall, this sounds like the same. Just to caveat what you're saying, this is the same prosecutive deluge that they used on Bruno. Hold on, I just slipped my mind. The 15th century, 16th century mathematician, astronomer, Bruno Giordano. Thank you. The same prosecutive evidence based on nothing to destroy his name on real evidence that this man had discovered. Same principle, same fact. Did the same thing. And they did to every other astronomer who said, yes, our planet revolves around the sun. No, the sun doesn't revolve around our planet. We're the center of the universe. And it's always religion and government who are the persecutors of truth. Always. In every case in history, you find the same exact MO.
That's right. See, the first rule of science is thou shalt not stick thy thumb in someone's bowl of rice. And, that's the number one thing. So you absolutely nailed it, all right? These guys, this was purely political. So I can just see they're putting the screws to this observatory beneath the water. And above the water, you got Mike Brown, Pluto Killer, and Bagel Babe putting the schmear on these guys. So I'm figuring, but they go after Powell and Tombaugh, and Bagel Babe is busting their chops, right? And let's put it in perspective here. The Lowell Observatory has been in operation since it was founded, I think just right after the 1900s. It's a very prestigious observatory. And Tombaugh was working there when he discovered Pluto in 1930 because he was doing the mission of the observatory, looking for Neptune's perturber, or what Lowell had defined as Planet X. And the term Planet X simply means it is a planet that we know is out there because of the way it interacts with objects we can observe, which is exactly the process by which Neptune was discovered, because of the way it creates perturbations in the orbit of Uranus. So Neptune has the same perturbations, which means that there's got to be something outside of Neptune's orbit that's big as hell. So they knew that there's Planet X out there, and they discovered, when they discovered Pluto, they thought they had discovered Planet X. And they had solved the riddle. So that's the reason why Bagel Babe is laying the schmear on Tombaugh for having discovered a planet in 1930.
Right.
But it wasn't until the moon Charon was discovered, Pluto's moon Charon. And not by Mike Brown. He didn't do any science on that regard. He was called Pluto Killer, and that's the hashtag he uses because he was the guy that led the charge to demote Pluto. All right, and he was successful. So whoopee fizz, right? He's very good at politics.
Right.
In terms of how good at science, right? Show me something.
Right.
And
I'm still waiting. Yeah.
So what happens is Alma, they're getting hit above and below the water line, and man, they're getting creamed. And the astronomers had to pull their papers, not at the speed of science, but at the speed of politics. And that ended it right there. Now, once Caltech and Mike Brown had managed, with the help of Bagel Babe at the Washington Schmear, to put the Zots on these guys, they had to fill the vacuum they created. So out comes Planet 9. And Planet 9 should have been called Plan 9 from Outer Space to honor Ed Wood's worst director in the history of Hollywood. Okay? I think that what they did with Planet 9 was it was probably some graduate or postgraduate wrote a paper, was sitting on the shelf. It was a little dusty. They pulled it off, put a little dance on it, and slapped it out there. And they get all the promotion because the PTB own the media outlets, and they haven't discovered anything. All they've done is put a crazy theory out there of Planet 9. And immediately the other astronomers around the world start taking it apart like doll rags. Italy came back, some astronomers in Italy came back and said, half of the search area that you're saying here to look for this thing is invalid. It's not going to be there, and they very carefully documented. And the reason why that is important is that if you have a true scientific process where you are looking at authenticity, you're authenticating this, you're vetting it, you're going through some sort of peer review process, you're not going to make an easy blunder like this for someone else to pick you apart. But if you're grabbing some hairy-ass nonsense off the shelf because you got to fill the void after you put the schmear on honest guys, then there you go.
Right.
And so now they're not, and what's happening is other astronomers, like in Arizona, they're finding something, but we don't know. Do we call it 9 or do we call it 10?
All right. Add the
All right?
confusion. Add the interjection of what's the word I'm looking at? Add the interjection of confusion, so it messes up people's thought process, so they're not really sure what's going on. And it makes total sense, Marshall. But you know what? Yeah. We're getting close to the wire here, my friend. We got about a little less than 20 minutes to go. And I really want to get into the meat and potatoes, because your latest article said, okay, it's here. The binary system is here. It's within Earth's. It's in other words, it has surpassed Mars. This binary twin surpassed Mars. The outermost system, which is Nibiru, is within Earth's grasp or reach, so to speak. Now there's been tons of
It's inside Earth's orbit.
All right? It is inside Earth's orbit. Okay.
It is in a position of superior conjunction.
Okay. So
right.
Let's break it down step by step. Let's break it down step by step. Everybody's been photographing it. To me, it's more than evident is here. The increased Earth changes are getting more drastic. The amount of rain I've seen come down in these massive bursts, not microbursts, massive bursts, have increased by tenfold, maybe larger. Marshall, I can only suspect that we're going to see this get more frequent and more drastic. What should we expect as the whole outcome, as it all plays out? And what are and on the other side, you always talk about the other side, which I love, by the way, the communities, the getting together, the ability to regroup ourselves as human beings, rebuild, and that Star Trek future you always talk about. Lay it out for me in the next 20 minutes here, my friend. Okay.
Now, the first thing is I want everybody to understand what's coming is pain. We're talking about probably 90% of the population, if not more, of the planet is going to perish, because most of our population is along coastlines. And if you look at the disinformation efforts of the elites, they're keeping people on the coastlines. Don't worry, interesting light show. And then the next step will be, don't worry, shelter in place. In other words, stay there so you drown. And that's going to take a lot of the loss of life. First thing you need to understand is who is going to die and why. I address that in my video series, Two Suns in the Sky, Who Lives, Who Dies.
Make that recommendation. Marshall, make that recommendation where they can find that so you don't have to go through that scenario right now.
Go just to twosunsinthesky.com or just go to my website, marshallmasters.com, and look on the top menu and you'll see Two Suns in the Sky. Listen to that. Now, what is going to be coming down the pike? I have an article that's on the observation at altitude, photographs that were taken by Lanai Bickle at altitude, and there I'm talking about there's two events right now that are the huge buzz, which is the eclipse on August 21st and the September 23 Revelation 12 prophecy. And this could be foreshadowing. Now, on August 21, folks, we don't know what we're going to see.
Right.
And we could just see a nice eclipse. But, you know, I made my bones on discovering a comet during an eclipse. So these are very unique circumstances. And you can just, on my website, just look for the link, King of Terror. You'll see it in the right column and just scroll down and you can go back and see where I did that. And so this eclipse on the 21st for me is taking me back to the very beginning, really. And this is a very unique thing. It's been hundreds of years since this type of eclipse was observed in the United States. It's crossing the country from Oregon to South Carolina, and the path of totality crosses 11 states. All 11 states are preparing with emergency planning. They're expecting all kinds of problems. Now, if on August 21st, if people are out there and they are seeing something in the sky that they don't recognize, we're going to see a whole lot of WTF videos on YouTube, Facebook, Vimeo, and so forth.
That's exactly what I expect, Marshall.
And we could see that. Now, if we see that, then it then raises a possibility of what happens with September 23. So September 23 is a very unique celestial alignment that hasn't occurred, according to some researchers who've actually gone back in time. The last time there was this same celestial alignment was 6,000 years ago. And this is the one where we're talking about the prophecy, the Bible prophecy talks about a woman giving birth. And what I do in this one article is I tie that with the Hopi prophecy, red Kachina, blue Kachina, to tell a full story. And as one possible way of explaining what we might see, not making a prediction, but this is what we might see. Nibiru is the furthest out major planet in the Planet X system mini constellation, where the brown dwarf is at the core of that system. And which means that as it's coming around the sun, the first thing we're going to see is Nibiru. Then the other objects will follow in afterwards. And when we see it, what is the Revelation talking about? Well, I just read the text literally. It's talking about a woman giving birth. Now, if Nibiru is coming out from behind the sun to our side, all right, it is now coming in from a superior conjunction to an inferior conjunction. All right, this changes things, and the first thing we're going to see with it is that there will be a terminator of that line between the dark and the light. And think of the lunar phases. We see that terminator, which shapes the crescent as the crescent moves across through the lunar phases from one side to the other.
Right, makes sense.
A similar kind of thing will happen as it's coming in. Now, then there's the color, all right? And the Hopis talk about the blue Kachina, which precedes the red Kachina. And people think of it in terms of two objects. It's not. It's one object. What we're talking about, what the Hopi are describing is Doppler shift. And with Doppler shift, you have blue shift and you have red shift. Blue shift happens when the light waves are being compressed as the object is approaching you. Then as the object is leaving you, red shift takes place because the light waves are elongating. All right. Therefore, Nibiru will be blue until it crosses well above us over Earth's orbit. And then once it's going beyond Earth's orbit, and the whole Nemesis system is going to then pass between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. And as Nibiru is headed out towards that part of the Nemesis trajectory, then it's going to become red because of the Doppler shift effect, redshift. So we're going to see birthing, this crescent, this terminator. The reason why I say it's like a birthing process is think about the infant coming out of the birth canal and the head is crowning. Well, that's exactly, if you're talking about, think of lunar phases and then imagine a baby's head as it comes out of the mother's womb and out of the birth canal.
Makes perfect sense what you're saying, Marshall.
There you are. So this is possibly what we see. And in my articles on the site, I give very specific instructions for those of you that are going to be under the path of totality for going out and looking at it. Now, you're going to go do an eclipse, so you, by golly, need to have good eye protection, all right? Which means you may not see anything during the eclipse other than the eclipse because you're wearing the eye protection. But you got a smartphone. People are going to be using their smartphones. And all you do is everyone's going to want to zoom in for a nice tight picture. Well, zoom back out so that the sun is about a fourth of the size it would be normally if you were all zoomed in. And then move the sun up to the top of the frame, where it's only halfway in. And then keep that perspective of the sun and run it all around all four edges. Back up to the top and then back down, and then go ahead and zoom in and continue your view. Just take 2 or 3 seconds to do this with video. Then when you get home and you're reviewing your video without your eye protection, you could very well see something. And that's what I'm asking.
I have a sneaky feeling that's exactly what's going to happen, Marshall.
It could. It could be. I can tell you that when I was doing that original King of Terror, and that was in 1999, the eclipse was over Turkey. I happened to see 3 objects during the eclipse. And the reason why I saw them was that the shooter, it was NASA provided the video, and the shooter saw something that was in the overscan area. And in professional cameras, you have an overscan so you can see if someone is going to put an elbow into the frame or, something's, you got something that's just kind of hanging on the edge.
Well, the reason, Marshall, the only reason I said that is because there is the Einstein gravitational lensing effect that's going to be created on this total eclipse, and it's going to create a gravitational lensing effect, which is going to pull everything outside and around, which you will be able to see it. So I suspect that's exactly what people are going to capture, my friend, and that's the reason I said that.
Well, that's an interesting thought. The Einstein, that was. Einstein offered, he said that there were going to be one of 3 ways to prove his theory of relativity, and that lensing effect was one of the 3, and it was actually, there was an astronomer who made the observation, and that was when relativity became a fact.
Right. And that's why I'm saying I think you're going to be correct in your summation of what people are going to videotape. They may not necessarily see it when they're videotaping it, but when they go to do that review, they're going to go, oh, boy, there's a problem here.
There's a problem. And then we're going to see a lot of, well, it's limbs aberration, and, they're going to, trust me, they're going to go with sundogs and stuff like that. They're going to pull out all the tricks, old tricks are the best tricks.
So, Marshall, we got
they're going to smear them.
My dear friend, we have 5 minutes left. I know that you're doing the, and I'm sorry if I forgot the name of the church that you started, but it is a community church about people getting together for, not just spiritual, but communicative and survivalist action after the effect of these events that we're going to face. And I know it's a wonderful thing that you put together. I know it's a growing community. And, how is that growing, and how are people accepting this idea that are, congregating to, it's a spiritual enlightenment and transformation into a new system of that Star Trek future you love to talk about and I love to hear about, by the way.
Okay. Well, I found it's Knowledge Mountain Church of Perpetual Genesis, and you can find it at knowledgemountain.org. We're not a big tent church. We're not a replacement belief system. Your core faith works. Ain't broken, don't fix it. We fill in the gaps for people because, frankly, folks that are in awareness tend to they're more spiritual people. They're not doctrinal people, checklist people, and consequently, if I ask them, how many churches and study groups have you been kicked out of in your life, they start laughing hysterically. Because they keep asking questions that are on the, there's this list, thou shalt only ask questions from this list. And they go off list, and then, that's it. Get out of here. You're a troublemaker. And so there's so many people over the years that I've met that are in awareness. They're very spiritual. And the biggest reason why I started the church was I've always wanted people in awareness to know one thing: that they're not alone. That to me is so vital because I see them every day. To me, I see an ocean of candles, and it's beautiful.
You just brought up something very prevalent. I just need to say that you said you see an ocean of candles. My very dear friend Bob Keene, which I know you know very well, and you've quoted him in the past on this upcoming event, he said, when you spark or ignite that candle within every soul and more candles ignite, it's no longer, little dots of light in the darkness, but it's one giant voluminous illumination of consciousness. So it just sparked that in me, Marshall, and I had to tell you that.
Well, thank you, and I will tell you that I think Bob Dean is one of my personal heroes. I just really love the man, and he really puts it out there on the line. There's some really, really good people, and in 2008 he was on Camelot, and he said, "We're going to be on the same side of the sun," which is a worst-case scenario. In other words, best case was Exodus, worst case with Noah's flood. And the difference is during Exodus, when the Nemesis, Dark Star, Brown Dwarf, crossed the ecliptic as it was heading south, the plane of our system, during Exodus, Earth was on the opposite side of the sun. This time, we're going to be on the same side of the sun. The kill shot that Ed Dames is talking about is when Nibiru does pass between us and the planet Venus. We are going to have the days of darkness. That is when the pole shift is going to happen. That is when we could very well be hit with a huge cosmic sprite, or cosmic lightning, if you will, and that's going to cause a lot of problems. So There's a tremendous convergence of this. And with Knowledge Mountain, we're not at an affective church. We're an effective church. Affective is, whatever. That's 90 minutes. You go sing some songs, wada, 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 go home, and and then the next day you're foreclosing mortgages on widows and orphans, and because somebody's got to do it, right? That's an effective church. It's all about feeling good.
Yeah.
We're an effective church. In other words, you're coming in.
Leadership. It's all about leadership, right?
It's all about leadership, but it's also about coming in with a sense of purpose.
Right.
All right. We're not here saying, oh my gosh, I'm so my boss is a blah blah blah. What am I? It's like, go find somebody else for that. When we're talking, we're talking. A lot of times when we have church meetings, this is when I'm really I'm talking with the folks in my church about things I'm seeing in research that I'm not ready to go public with in an interview or an article.
Right.
And, because all of these people have been following it, they've been in awareness all their lives. They're beautiful people. And I don't push the church all that heavy because, they just find us.
Well, yeah, I know, because everybody really who's looking for information goes out. Seek and you shall find, right? That's a common terminology. That's all. What about? And also, I want to ask you this before I even get to this next question, because I'm going over because I just love speaking with you so much, Marshall. But do you want to come back on the 25th so we can go over what takes place on the 21st with video evidence? Because I think there's going to be a bunch of evidence. Would you be open to coming back on the 25th?
Sure. We have a lot of fun.
Wow.
I'm enjoying this as much as you are. So, let's do the 25th.
Okay, we'll do the 25th. Now, my next, and what I was getting to was, what about us landlubbers, right? Because I'm definitely a landlubber. I'm in Phoenix. You're in Nevada. I think we're pretty much in the safe zone. From what you speak to,
no, au contraire.
Okay.
Au contraire. I'm sorry. I am sorry, but Long Valley Caldera pops, you're going to be buried in ash. All right?
But that's Phoenix. What I was going to ask. That's what I was alluding to. It's depending on location where we are, right? If we happen to make it through, right? What should
head north?
Right. Okay, head north. But what should besides escaping, your eventual death, so to speak. Right. What should we be doing as when people start community collecting together and start rebuilding? How do you see it? How should we do it? What should be our first priorities? I know food and water are number one on the list, but after that, what should take place?
Well, this is the reason why I wrote my book, Surviving the Planet X Tribulation, a faith-based leadership guide. I wrote it for two audiences, all right? If you already haven't spent $1 million to build your bunker, excuse me, wakey, that ship has sailed.
Right.
So when we're all seeing this thing in the sky, 90% of the people are going to believe the nonsense they're going to be told on CNN, Fox, and MSNBC. Don't worry, it's not going to hit us. It's just an interesting light show. And they're going to buy that hook, line, and sinker. But then there are going to be people who actually can think for themselves, and they're going to go, no, this is existential, baby. This is a clear and present danger. And what you want to do is what you should be doing right now is finding faith-based communities to align yourself with. You should be out there shopping. Now, in my Two Sons in the Sky, Who Lives, Who Dies, I give very explicit instructions on how to go about doing this. In Surviving the Planet X Tribulation, this is your bridging tool. I did this for people who go, I got a big heart and a tiny wallet. If I can't afford bullets, beans, and bunkers. My God, what am I going to do? All right? What you're going to do is you're going to position yourself with groups of people who are going to have the most likely capability to organize and respond, while 90% of the rest of the world is listening to the idiocy and going to the mall.
Right. Makes perfect sense what you're saying, yeah.
And so, for the people that want, what should I be doing right now? My 2 Sons in the Sky is for people in awareness, and I give them the strategy. If they want the tool is the book. Because what you need to do is you need to find churches that you can work with, whatever your faith is, and you need to find a church, a very special kind of church, not only one where it's people you want to hang with, but it's more important that you're finding a faith-based organization with the kind of leadership that's going to be able to get the flock to safety. That's important. And I map all of that in 2 Sons in the Sky. Because what you have to do is you come into that church, you don't have time to come in from the bottom. You got to come in from the top. All right? That's how you come in. And that's why I wrote the book, Surviving the Planet X Tribulation, is to give people a bridging tool, if they're in awareness, to do that.
I got it.
2 Sons in the Sky, start with that. Folks, it doesn't cost you anything. And it's very pleasant, relaxing. I think it's a very nice audio book, but it's not fear porn. People love fear porn because it's like ghost stories. Sitting around the campfire, and the meat hook went through the girl.
Well, and that's it, Marshall. Most people take this as, a ghost story. But what they don't realize is that the ghost is a demon and the demon is real. I think that's how they're viewing it. And I think even in the truther community, Marshall, I bet there's a probably 90% rate of people within the truth community who are in it just for the fear factor of it. But they don't realize how real all this is.
It's entertaining. Woo! Each marshmallow, go to bed.
Yeah,
okay?
I agree.
And they're doing
I absolutely agree.
So, stupid is the stupid does. That's one gum. All right? And they're going to do that. But if you really want to do something, one of my big problems, in that series, I say 3 leading causes of death during the tribulation are going to be denial, procrastination, and location.
Right.
Those are the 3 leading causes of death. 99% of the world is in denial. But I see 90% of the people who are in awareness are in procrastination. They're going, okay, if I spend 3 hours a day on Facebook and YouTube and Vimeo, and I look at the latest speculation and fear porn, and I am studying the problem.
Right.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, you're not studying the problem. You're committing mental masturbation.
Or mental suicide.
Huh?
Or mental suicide, one or the other.
Yeah, there's no difference. You have the same result. And so if you're really going to take it seriously, you do it. And I've had to give up a long time ago on trying to do something to help all of the people.
You just brought up something very prevalent. The difference between fear and procrastination is real world events. And it's usually too late when that world shifting event happens, because then you're going to be in fear. And it's also too late if you're in procrastination, because you're also too late. So you have to be in front of the event in order to supersede both the fear and procrastination. That sums it all up, my friend. I couldn't have stated it better myself.
You did say it yourself. And you did a first-rate job. You nailed it. You nailed it.
Well, that's why I love you, Marshall, because you come from a common sense perspective on the reality of what we're really facing. And here's the thing. Whether it is going to be, like you say, a very, very bad time, or it could be not as bad as we all suspect, the problem is electric grids are going to go down. Nuclear plants are going to shut down. Where's your food? Where's your water going to come from? And how are you going to sustain yourself for a better part of 6 months, a year, or as you've prognosticated, a better part of a decade? How are you going to survive in all this? People don't understand how really real this all is. I mean, think about the blackout. What was it, in 2003 in New York? And that was only for 5 days. Remember all those people going across the Washington Bridge, crossing over into New Jersey by the boatloads? And that was only 5 days with a small power outage. Now imagine a week or 2 weeks, a month, 6 months. Most people are going to be dead just from loss of power because they don't know how to function without it. I mean, I think, in my opinion, Marshall, most people will be dead within a week because they lost their iPhone and it doesn't work anymore, because all their heads are buried in it. But that's another issue altogether. That just drives me insane, by the way. But, so imagine just taking a small portion, a little something away. Take away their iPad, their notepad, their smartphone. How long are people going to be able to survive just without that? I think they'll go loony just because they don't have that in their hands, because they don't have the input anymore, and they don't know how to communicate with other people.
I mean, let's face it, a Generation 1 sundial is very simple user ergonomics. We're going to go back to Generation 1 sundials. The day after the eclipse, go out there and black sky. It's a big program that the feds are running right now to say what happens if the grid goes down. How are they going to deal with it? And this is a huge, huge drill. And it's being, you see people like Lisa Haven, and she's great for scandalizing everything.
Yeah.
And, but really check into it. There's things you can do. You can be part of the solution. In the tribulation, you're going to be one of three things. You're going to be a part of the solution, you're going to be a part of the problem, or you're going to be a victim. And you have to decide. Now, what I did here was I said, okay, if I'm going to be a part of the solution in my local community, what am I going to do? Well, I'm in two programs, ARES and CERT. ARES is Amateur Emergency Radio Service. CERT is Community Emergency Response Team. Both are federalized programs, all right? And one is administered by county. Both are really administered at the county level. And ARES is through ARRL for radio hams. So the thing is that part of my survival plan is already positioning myself as a volunteer to be a part of the solution. That's what you have to do, is you have to start thinking, everybody's, oh, what am I going to put in the garage? What am I going to put in the garage? What am I going to put in the garage? What happens if all of a sudden you put everything in the garage and your neighbors know, they see that stuff because, what do you know with the garage? You have to open it to get your car in and out, right? Someone eventually is going to see all your C ration cases or your MREs or your canned water. And then when the guacamole hits the fan, they're going to go, hey, guess who's got the goodies, Boom.
Right.
And what are your neighbors going to do? You are an evil hoarder.
Yeah. Well, you're also a target.
Okay.
You're a big target.
That's it.
Big target on your back.
That's it. So,
that's a fact.
It's not about holding on to things. It's about holding on to each other.
That's right. See, and I agree with that, Marshall. It's about holding on to each other. But then again, most people have forgotten how to be human in this human experience. This is one of the most disturbing parts of the society right now. It's like we've been AI'd and nobody realizes that we're living in this AI world. That's the whole thing. They're not even realize it because of the slow transition that the elite use to perpetuate their agenda, my friend. It really is. It's crazy.
Well, it's crazy, but you don't know. Talk to somebody who's, been in combat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they'll talk about, replacement troops coming in to replace the losses. And there they are at the forward operating base at night before admission the next day. And the newbies, there's some of them that are sitting there quiet, kind of just thinking about it and taking it in. And then there's the guys that are, beating their chest. I'm a badass warrior. Kill them all.
Right.
Let God sort them out. The next day when the bullets are flying, it's the badass who's running home to mama. And the guy that was just quiet is the one standing and delivering. He's fighting alongside you. So you don't know what's going to happen with people until things start to break. And then we're going to see who's got what it takes. Everybody talks the talk. We're going to find out who walks the walk when things happen. But
you are so right.
In the meantime, all I'm trying to do is trying to reach out to people to say, look, if you're in awareness, you need to start doing something constructive. And I'm here. I'm giving you the tools. But it's like, I'll tell you what people really want that are in awareness. They want a survival sugar daddy. They want somebody that's going to say, I spent $1 million to build this bunker just for a stranger like you. Here's the keys. Have a wonderful survival, and they walk off. Everybody's waiting for this sugar daddy to show up, or they're waiting for a golden chariot to come out of the sky, or a deity, or someone's going to rescue them because they did nothing.
Or they think they're going to be the lone wolf warrior who's going to be, he's going to be the Mad Max guy, right? Who's going to take out all the bad guys and restore sanity and some sort of semblance to humanity. Let me tell you something. You're deranged and delusional, and you're out of your mind. For anybody who's thinking that, it's community and strength within community, like Marshall says, that will restore a semblance of humanity so we can have that Star Trek future. And I just want to say this, that we've had this technology for a long, long time. And I think, Marshall, you always allude to this, but that breakaway civilization is no longer going to be a small, colluded system of people who've colluded together to basically keep the technology for themselves. But what's going to happen is once the money disappears, that technology breaks free to open to everybody. And I always wanted to say that to you, but I never got the chance. That's where we get that Star Trek freedom and technology, because of that breakaway civilization technology that will be made readily available to all of us, my friend.
I absolutely agree. There are so many wonderful ideas and so many, what people, we all think we're dependent on fossil fuel because that's the only way to power our lives. We're only dependent on pharma and what it can deliver. When the elites, during this tribulation, all the control mechanisms are going to be shattered and disappeared. If a guy invents an engine that can run on water, he's not going to have to worry about a bunch of federal thugs coming in on behalf of a vested interest to take all of his stuff and then turn his life upside down just simply because he had a better idea.
Yeah, or being poisoned or murdered.
We're going to have Nikola Teslas popping up everywhere. And there's going to be nobody to stop them. What I am seeing is we're going to have a renaissance. We're going to have a renaissance of invention. Because once people are, and it's going to be invention. Look at Ubuntu operating system, Linux.
Yes.
Linus Torvalds. Right now more computers run on Linux than anything else. If you're on the internet, probably 70% of the pages you're going on are going to be Linux. If you're on Google, it's Linux. If you're on Amazon, it's Linux. Everybody's using Linux. Microsoft still has monopoly on the desktop, but they lost the server war a long time ago. They came out to put TiVo out of business, okay? Well, TiVo was running Linux, and they ran Microsoft into the dirt.
Right.
Because they were giving it away, Free Software Foundation. This whole thing of the compensation is about helping other people, and the way the genius is compensated is through recognition. By people saying, somebody, Joe Yakuputsky or Sister Yakuputsky or someone invents something, and people are all going, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you, whoever you are. And there's public recognition, and that is the compensation in a cashless world. And we have that. We're going to have a technological renaissance that is going to completely remap the planet. And so I look to, unfortunately, the Venus Project, Jacques Fresco, and he's passed on. And Jacques, to me, is a hero. He gave us a model of the future. And we see, with these cashless societies, I think that, frankly, survival communities that are going to be successful, they'll have shoot-on-sight orders. If you see murderers, rapists, pedophiles, or bankers, shoot on sight.
Right. Well, with that
Okay.
said, Marshall, I need to thank you. I need to say this. It's been such a long time that I spoke with you, and I know I said this earlier, but I need to reiterate the statement that I find you such a cognitive, intelligent, thoughtful, insightful human being. You break things down in such a way that you don't make it, you don't make this a scientific nightmare for most people to comprehend and break down. You break it down in layman's terms for everybody. First of all, that's one of the appreciations I have. Secondly, it's your love for humanity. I know where you stand in your thought process and where you want to see us go, and I stand side by side with you in that thought process, my brother. Now, I hope, Longview Volcano does not bury me. I hope that does not happen. And if we all survive this, come out on the other side, like you always say, we have such a wonderful Star Trek future. We can hopefully meet up somewhere in the middle, my friend, and start that future together. Everybody listening here, you and I, your congregation of incredible human beings, of leaders, and who will give leadership to others who are looking for an answer to what has happened in this, these pressing times, these definitely changing times. But with that, I need to tell you, I love you as a brother and a fellow human being, and I want you to give out all your info, your website, so everybody can get to your pages, start reading, start learning, and start preparing, because the time is almost upon us. I think we're 1 minute to midnight as we speak right now, my friend.
I agree. For all my research work, go to marshallmasters.com, YOWUSA.com. My Two Suns in the Sky video, just twosunsinthesky.com. That'll take you to the video series. Watch that for free. The church, Knowledge Mountain Church of Perpetual Genesis, is knowledgemountain.org. All of these are available via links through marshallmasters.com. Most of all of the stuff that I do is free to the public. I'm trying to help people. Start with Two Suns in the Sky. There's also a free ebook on knowledgemountain.org, my church site called Survival Wellness Advocacy and the Big Win. And Two Suns in the Sky and Survival Wellness Advocacy are not going to cost you anything except your time, and they're going to give you a significant advantage in getting proactive about what you're going to do with the coming tribulation, because surviving for the sake of survival is suicide. You've got to have a reason to get up in the morning or you won't.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And also, I just want to let you know that Bad Baby want to let you know that she says, Marshall, I said thank you for being here, and she loves you dearly. She's a wonderful human being, a heart of gold. That one, she'd give the shirt off your back if that was the last thing she had on her back and you needed it, she'd give it to you. That's the kind of woman she is. With that being said, Marshall, thank you so much, and I'm really looking forward to speaking with you. It's either going to be me or Bad Baby. Hopefully she'll be well enough at that time to have the conversation. I'll be on the other side listening. But either way, I look forward to either hearing from you or speaking with you on the 25th, my friend. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening, my friend.
You too. You too. God bless.
God bless. And with that, everybody, let's run out the bumper song, and that will be the show for the night. And thanks for everybody attending the show, and I look forward to seeing all you guys next Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care of yourselves. Be safe. Be happy. Bye-bye.